And a happy Wednesday, everyone. What's happening, all you beautiful people in Facebook land? Welcome to another episode of Beyond Bricks, your one-stop shop for all things real estate and beyond. I'm your host, Terry Kalakos, chartered real estate and mortgage broker with Northeast Real Estate and Mortgage Agency, as well as CBC Alliance. And joining me in studio, finally, she's back. It's been like forever that you haven't been here. No, yeah, you were getting a massage last week from Danny. We have our beautiful co-host.
Live footage.
Yeah, yes. We have our beautiful co-host Marav Marciano, who. So let's just explain to the people what happened last week. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I use Marav's iPad when I broadcast live on Facebook. So this little device that you see here in front of me, this is Marav's iPad. That's why it's in like a pink kind of, anyways. And her pods connect to it. Mm-hmm. So you were in the office last week. I was in here with Guy, but when you put your pods in your ears, you went live. You were like broadcasting. I didn't realize. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm going, I need a massage.
Not only massages. I mean, you were asking for massages. You're asking for coffee. Like it gave people a glimpse of my life right there. Okay, that's what that really was.
So yes, we showed everyone how happy you are with me.
I'm still not able to lean up against the seat from Valentine's Day.
What are you talking
about? My back is like all scarred and you know.
I'm still looking for those rose petals. They never showed up on my bed.
No comment. No comment. Today's show, guys, is all about investing in real estate, which is something that I personally, it's how I've built my net worth over the years. It's the first thing that I did, even back in the day when I worked at Investors Group, I bought real estate. So today we're going to be talking about just that, buying real estate, how to invest in real estate, the things that you need to look at, all that good stuff. Marav, I don't know if you have any market update to give the good people. What's going on in the market right now? Have you seen?
Market is tough.
Okay.
I have to say sellers and buyers, still a big gap between them.
There's a huge disconnect.
Definitely a big gap. We see sellers still expecting COVID type of prices. And when we say COVID, we mean high prices.
Over asking, multiple offers.
Or even just expecting the same value as the home would have sold in 2021 or 2022. And realistically speaking, it's not that home prices have dropped. It's just that it's not the same kind of demand. It's not the same kind of bidding wars. The bidding wars obviously caused the home prices, the values to go up a lot because people were basically paying over asking and paying over value even sometimes.
Yep.
And now the buyers are expecting a deal. You know, rates are up. Real estate has slowed down. They're not getting that deal. So it's a little bit of a disconnect between sellers and buyers. So we're hoping that we're closing that gap slowly and getting to a stable market where buyers and sellers see eye to eye with respect to the value.
So what I've been seeing in the market over the last little while, few weeks, I can tell you that on a weekly basis right now, I have four promises to purchase that come in. So all these people that had gotten pre-approved, they're actually running, they're finding properties to buy. A lot of them are closing in June, May and June, which is good because it gives these people the opportunity to buy the property, get in, and then if rates come down from now until May to June, then they'll end up getting the lower interest rate. Although interest rates are actually pretty good, we're pushing like sub 5%, which I mentioned in last week's show as well.
Yep.
So all of that is hunky-dory. I think, and I had this conversation with someone this morning, I believe that the second part of this year, so normally, you know, we have like our buying season occurs, you know, in the spring, exactly. Yeah. March till May, June, right? I think that this year it's going to be shifted. And I think that as we get closer towards the summer and towards the tail end of this year, you're going to see a lot more activity because we are anticipating that the Bank of Canada is going to be lowering their overnight rate. And there was actually an announcement made recently. Inflation is down. It's at 2.9%.
Wow.
So that's really good. The second thing is the other thing that the government said is there's a very strong possibility that Bank of Canada is going to cut rates before the Fed in the United States cuts rates.
And we're anticipating when? First quarter, second quarter?
I'm still saying second quarter of the year. Tail end of the second quarter, we'll probably end up seeing interest rate cuts.
And that's why you think that summer will have more activity than usual, just because of that rate adjustment.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So
Let's hope, because we need that gap to close. We need buyers need to buy, sellers need to sell, and they need to start seeing eye to eye.
The other thing that I've been seeing on the market, I find that there's a lot of people when they're selling their house right now, like you mentioned, they're asking for, a lot. But a lot of times houses, even when somebody's making an offer, one reason or another, it falls through because of inspections. This is something that's come up a few times now. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, why is it falling through? Neglect over the last year or so. There's people that have listed their properties last year. They never sold for one reason or another. They neglected certain things. And now inspections are actually falling through. Deals are falling through after inspection. So
listen, a home requires maintenance, and in their defense, this has been a very tough year economically. It's been, there wasn't an official recession announced, but in my eyes, there's a recession, and it's been tough. Groceries are expensive, everything is expensive, and taking care of a home is expensive. So I get it, and especially if you plan on selling, you say, I don't want to put another penny into this home before selling it. But yes, it does affect the value of the home, and it does affect if you haven't taken care of a crack or mice coming into the home or whatever it is. It could definitely affect the potential sale. Absolutely.
Okay. Let's jump into our show.
Let's jump into real estate investing.
Real estate investing. I think there was a couple of people that we wanted to say hello to also on Facebook.
Yeah, Leslie Singerman says a big hello. And I lost a couple of the other comments, so I'm looking for them.
It doesn't matter. They'll pop up back up. So, okay, let's talk real estate investing, okay? Yeah. So real estate investing, as far as I'm concerned, and when I talk about investing in real estate, I talk about, anything that you're purchasing that's going to generate a passive income for you, right? That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, buying your house. Yes, it is an investment if you look at it in a certain way. Yeah. Some people would disagree. Some people would say your house is actually a liability.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to consider that an investment. But for today's show purposes, I'm going to be referring to things that are generating passive income for you.
So now I want to rewind. You mentioned passive income, and I've heard you say in real estate investing, do you want to be a rancher or do you want to be a farmer? So I think that whole concept needs to be explained, because yes, there's different ways of earning income in real estate, and passive income is one of them, but we do see some people flipping homes, etc. So let's just explain this difference between rancher and farmer.
So this is something that comes from one of my mentors, Robert Kiyosaki, right? And Robert Kiyosaki, for those of you that don't know, he's the guy that wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant. I mean, he wrote a whole bunch of books, Rich Kid, Poor Kid, something like that. I mean, there's all kinds of interesting books that he wrote, and he's a real estate guru. And I consider him one of my mentors. I've actually had interviews with Robert Kiyosaki over the years, and he's really a wealth of knowledge, okay? He says, when you go as a real estate investor, when you look at yourself, you have to determine whether or not you're a rancher or you're a dairy farmer, right? So let's explain what the fundamental difference is. When you're buying real estate, or when you're, let's go to the cattle, right? So when you're a rancher, what are you doing? You buy cattle, you raise the cattle for slaughter, right? So you make money off of that cattle being slaughtered.
Yeah, off of the meat.
Off of the meat.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a dairy farmer, what you're going to do is you're going to buy that cattle, you're going to milk it, right? So you're going to take
You're going to milk it?
You're going to milk the cow, right? You like my motion here that I'm doing? Okay, you're going to milk the cow, and you're going to sell its fruits, if you will. So basically, you're going to sell its milk, and you're going to make revenues from the milk that you're selling because you're a dairy farmer. And eventually, that cow, chances are, will go to slaughter as well. But for the most part, you're making money off of the milk sales, okay? Yeah. And it's the same thing when we're talking about real estate investing. You have to look at it and say, am I going to be the type of landlord or the person that buys real estate that buys and sells properties? So if you're a buy and sell, if you're a flipper, you're akin to being a rancher.
So you're buying, you're fixing it up, you're fattening that cow.
And
then selling the meat. And then selling that cow.
Selling that cow. Okay. So in a case like that, you're considered a rancher. Okay. Yeah. If we're talking about you're buying the property, you're collecting rent from it, you're holding on to it for years, and then maybe eventually down the line you sell it, in a case like that, you're a dairy farmer.
And that's passive income, the passive income model.
That's the passive income model. Okay.
So we got that out of the way. So you are more of a passive income believer.
I'm a dairy farmer.
You're a dairy farmer.
I'm a dairy farmer. Okay. So when we look at using that analogy, I always go back to the advice that my mommy gave me.
My mommy.
Many years ago. Okay. So,
you could say my mother.
My mommy. She's my mommy. Okay.
Okay.
So my mom always said, never buy a single family home until you have enough rents coming in to cover the expenses of that single family home.
Smart mommy.
Smart mommy. Okay. Yeah. And it took me a few years to understand that when I was a teenager. But then the first property that I purchased when I moved out of my parents' house was a fourplex. Mm-hmm. That fourplex that I bought, my tenants paid for me to live in that fourplex. They covered my mortgage, they covered my taxes, my insurance, and it still left me a little bit of a profit at the end of the year. So I made money off of my tenants, which gave me a lot of freedom to do other things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then from there, obviously, you go in, you refinance, you buy more and more and more and more, and eventually you build up so much passive income from these investment properties that you own that you can actually buy yourself a single family house, move into it, and you know that the expense of that single family house is actually covered by the rental revenue and the passive income that you're collecting.
Mm-hmm. Ideal world, definitely. That's what we want.
Now, with that said, my first property, I was 24. So this was, now I'm going to reveal my age to people.
Ooh,
okay, December of 2000. That's when I bought my first property. I paid $107,000 for it. Fourplex.
Yeah.
That same property today is pushing $1 million. Okay? It's a different market.
But you saw the potential of the neighborhood. So I think that's a good point to bring up. You bought it at such a low price, and people might say, he's so lucky. No, it's not luck. You looked at the neighborhoods that were really not in demand at the time, that had potential to become something, that had subsidies from the city to grow it into something, and saw the future potential of that property. And that's why you got it at a good price. And at the time, I remember seeing that property. It was not surrounded by very good things.
I had like bikers on one side. I'm not going to say what faction bikers there were, but there was bikers on one side of my property, growing pot.
Yes.
And then I had on the other side like a shooting gallery. I mean, it was a disaster. The area, I had prostitutes.
Exactly.
The neighborhood's completely different. It gentrified.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is when I bought that building at 107, and this is the point that I really want to make with this, okay? When I purchased that property, that whole neighborhood was on sale. Everyone was selling their buildings. Why? Because in 1999, if I was to look to buy in that neighborhood, chances are fourplexes and triplexes and stuff like that, I probably would have ended up being able to buy them at, I don't know, 70,000, 80,000, right? Because that's what the market was. And then all of a sudden we get into the 2000s and these properties suddenly go up above $100,000. The minute the value went up above $100,000, everyone was selling. Everyone was selling. And my initial reaction when I bought that property, my first place that I was actually looking, because I'm a Myland guy, I grew up on St. Joseph, I wanted to buy something in Outremont to be close to my family. So when I was first looking, I was looking in Outremont. And I was looking at triplexes around $500,000.
Wow.
And I actually had a real estate investor who used to work with me at Investors Group, and he says, "Oh, Terry, you're looking to buy a property." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Is this your forever home that you're buying?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "So why are you looking in Outremont? The values have already gone up." He goes, "You need to look at a developing neighborhood."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Okay." He goes, "You got to pick up the phone and call the city and find out which neighborhoods the city is doing subsidies in. Once you know which neighborhood the city is doing subsidies in," did I say that? Which neighborhoods the cities are doing subsidies
in.
Yeah, exactly. Once you know which neighborhoods the cities are doing subsidies in, you can be sure that these properties are going to go up in value. So I said, okay. So I picked up the phone, and the city of Montreal told me, well, we're doing subsidies in these neighborhoods. So then I ended up starting to look in those neighborhoods. And lo and behold, I ended up buying my property. And sure enough, the city was doing subsidies. And within a year of me acquiring that property, it went from 107, which I bought it, to 160. And at the time that I acquired it, my reaction was, hey, I should buy more. But I didn't.
Mm.
And I should have, but I didn't. And once the values went up, I was like, oh, I missed the boat now, not realizing that moving forwards, the values were going to continue to go up.
Yeah.
But the most important thing for me when I bought it, again, was what the cash flow was, right?
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, this ear thing is like killing me today. I don't know why. I'm like scratching around my ear. Sorry about that.
No problem. I thought I was saying something that I was annoying you.
No,
Okay.
not at all. I'm like trying to fix this headphone.
Okay.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. Real estate has been a lucrative way of growing our net worth. And of course,
you see how it goes to our net worth?
Of course.
Right? It goes to
what's
our net
yours
worth.
is mine.
And what's yours is yours.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, please
That's
continue.
marriage.
Yes.
Yeah, so our
Net worth.
net
yes.
worth and our fourplex.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Our fourplex.
No, but seriously though, I've really like surveyed wealthy or successful people, and a lot of them have made their wealth through real estate. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking. It's too late. Rates are high. Properties are up. And I'm going to have to disagree with that because, first of all, there's a lot of deals out there. If you're looking in the right places, you just have to do the right calculations. It has to cash flow. It has to make sense. So definitely it's harder. It's harder to find a deal, but it's never...
It's not impossible.
It's not impossible.
We've had a ton of clients that have found properties recently that are cash flowing, right?
Exactly.
And some of them are smaller properties, some of them are larger properties, right? So there is possibility, and there is I agree. The thing that's important to remember, and I'm going to go into my calculations now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about, let's use my example, right, of the 107,000 that I paid for that property. Okay. When I bought that property, I put down with my notary fees, everything. I remember it was the biggest check that I had ever written in my life. It was $27,500. Okay, that's what I had to put out of my pocket. The rest of it was mortgaged. Okay. Mm-hmm. When you're buying a property, there seems to be this disconnect that says that the property that you're buying is, you've paid, let's say, 107 in this example. But did I actually pay 107 for it? Yes, theoretically on paper, I paid 107, but the money was leveraged, right? So what came out of my pocket was $27,500. My rental revenues that I was collecting, so my profits at the end of the year, and now I know that these numbers are not going to happen now, but my numbers back then for that first property that I bought were my profits were close to 15,000. It was like 14 and change every year that I was making in profits off of it. After mortgage payments, after everything was paid.
That was what was left in your pocket.
That's what was left in my pocket. Okay. For $27,500, the way that I calculate that yield is I look, $27,500 came out of my pocket. I'm making 14,000. The rest of it is going to pay for that mortgage, right? So my return on my investment was over 50% in this example, right? And it's the way that people need to look at things today. So I have clients that'll come in and they're going to say, I want to buy a property and I want to put as much money as I possibly can down so that way my property can actually cash flow, which is fine. But I would rather you find a property that is not that you're not going to have to be in a position that you're going to put a ton of money down and break even or cash flow a little bit, because that's what's going to give you the biggest return on your investment. Right? Make sense?
Yeah.
What I'm saying? So you got to look at what you're putting down versus how much you're receiving.
And we've seen some people who had to shift a little bit what they wanted. Like you say, you shifted from Outremont to Hochelaga in your case. In other cases, sometimes you have to shift completely somewhere different. Like we know some people have bought in Trois-Rivières. In
New Brunswick.
Anywhere.
I mean, we have clients that buy everywhere. Right?
Exactly. And sometimes it's the type of investment property also. You can go from long-term leasing to short-term leasing. You could go from condo to condotel. You can, so at the end of the day, it's sometimes you have to modify a little bit what you had in mind. And like you say, if this is not somewhere you're going to live, at the end of the day, it's a business you're buying. So if you're buying that 7-plex in Trois-Rivières and you would never live there, it doesn't matter. There's tenants in there. They're paying. You're cash flowing. You're making money. You bought a business. That's it.
Exactly.
That's it. It's not a place where you're going to, have your family. It doesn't matter.
It's true. And again, at the end of the day, it's what really counts is what's the money that you're making. And from there, you can decide, does this make sense? Like I said, we have clients that bought in New Brunswick. We have clients that buy in Ontario. We have clients that buy everywhere. The beautiful thing about real estate, and we've had the shows about buying real estate even in Florida, right? The beautiful thing about real estate is you are not geographically limited.
It's true.
So people think, I want to buy an investment property. I live in Brossard, so I want to buy something in Brossard. Why? Why
and
not
they're going to
go
answer to collect rents more easily, to fix it up more easily.
Okay, so let's address that. Let's start with rents. Okay, we live in 2024. I was about to say we live in 2020. I don't know what kind of a glitch was coming out of my brain there, but we live in 2024.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, that was me.
We have a lamp that just fell. You're like
I'm a mess.
Seriously, you're bugging with your headphones.
I'm a total mess.
Okay, anyways. So we have I lost my train of thought now.
We live in 2024 to collect rent.
What?
We could,
What the hell are you talking about?
We're talking about collecting rent.
Yeah.
We live in 2024, ...
Exactly. So we live in 2024. E-transfers exist. There's a company that I use, which is called Autonome Solutions. And these people, they literally will they will take the money out of your client's account or your tenant's account.
Yeah, the direct, what do you call that?
Direct withdrawals, right? So they will set up those payments, take them out on the first of every month and put it into your bank account. All of these services exist today, which means that you as a landlord, you don't need to be going out on the first of every month to collect rents. I always had property managers. For years, I had them because I couldn't run Northeast and manage my properties once Northeast became what Northeast became, right? So what did I end up doing? I hired property managers. The last property manager that I had, and I don't have one currently, okay? So people are probably wondering, how the hell are you managing properties? And, well, the last property manager that I had, thankfully he was a lazy ass, okay? And he's the one that set me up with Autonome Solutions so that I don't have to go and collect, so he doesn't have to go and collect rent. So all of this money was now going into my accounts. I was still paying him a management fee For what? When a tenant would have a problem, they would call him and he would end up sending a plumber.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't even handy. Right? So as a landlord, the best advice, if you decide that you're going to buy real estate, get yourself a good electrician, a good plumber, and a GC. Okay, so just someone that you know that you can trust to do some minor repairs, a plumber and
like a handyman.
Handyman, an electrician, and a plumber.
Handyman or woman.
Or woman.
Yes.
Those are your three things that you require. Okay, everything else around that can be taken care of automatically. Don't make fun of me. She's making fun of the way.
Who does number 3 like this?
Greeks do number 3 like this.
It's usually this.
No, that's
or this.
That's weird. Moroccans like you.
So now let's look at the different types of investment properties, because I think there's a lot of confusion around that.
But hang on.
Yeah.
Do you agree with me?
I agree. Next.
Okay. Sorry. Because you didn't agree with me, or
I agree. Yeah. You are right.
Okay, there you go. Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm right.
No, you're right. You're right. Absolutely. With respect to what types of investment properties, because it is confusing in a sense, there's different ways of making money in real estate, and it's not just buying a duplex or buying a triplex. There's many more, and there's things to know with respect to minimum down payments and things like that. When we talk about plexes, okay, so we're talking about duplex and up. Let's go over the down payment required so that it's known.
Let's start with the smallest of the
so
bunch.
Condo or single family home.
So I'm going to give two, I'm going to create a grid here, okay? So let's assume that you're living in a property, okay? If you're buying a condo or a single family home or a duplex and you plan on living in it, the minimum down payment is 5%. If you're buying a triplex or a fourplex, the minimum down payment, if you're living in it, is 10%. If you're buying anything 5+ doors, the minimum down payment is 15%. Now, going back to this whole thing again, if you're buying this property and you're not planning on living it, so if it's purely for rental purposes, the minimum down payment for a condo, single family home, duplex, triplex, or fourplex is 20%. If you're buying 5+ doors, it remains at 15%. Okay, so those are the down payment requirements. And the other thing that I will add is if you're buying a condo, a single family home, or a duplex, and it's over $500,000, there's like tranches that you have to respect, right? So anything between $0 to $500,000, it's 5% down, so it would be $25,000. Anything above that, all the way up to $1 million, it's 10%. So if you buy something at $750,000 and it's a duplex, your minimum down payment in a case like that would be $50,000.
So it would be 5% of the first $500,000, which is $25,000, and then another 10% of the next $250,000,
exactly,
which is another $25,000. Okay,
exactly.
So now, with respect to the down payments, it's known, it's understood, and this is.
And I just made a mess too. Look at this.
You
Boom.
see, it's contagious.
It's not just contagious. You. There you go.
It's because I'm in front of you. You're quite nervous.
Yeah, for sure.
I know.
Look at this. This is why I tell people, do not eat or drink in the studio. Look, I have to clean this up now. Okay, there you go. Done.
And you cleaned up with my paper. That's so sweet.
Boom.
Okay. So with respect to down payments, we got it. Now, of course, this doesn't apply to semi-commercials and things like that, which have different calculations. So when it comes to that, you earn your money with the rents. And I know that nowadays the cash flow is a little tough. It's not what it used to be. And, we have the Régie du Logement, or the TAL now, the Tribunal, which, it limits us with respect to how much we can increase our rents. So would you say it's still a lucrative investment to buy a small investment property, duplex, triplex, or people should be looking at more?
If you're going to be living in it, there's nothing wrong with you buying a duplex. Okay, and this is actually something that more people should be doing today. So young couples, wanting to move into their first property, instead of buying a condo, why not look at a duplex?
Mm-hmm.
Chances are you're going to pay maybe a little bit more for that duplex, but you're going to have that rent coming in that's going to help you pay for that mortgage. And then eventually, if you decide that, hey, you know what, I don't want to be living in this duplex anymore, you either refinance, take out the money the equity that you've built up into it, and then use that money to go and buy something else. Or what you end up doing is you basically end up selling it and then taking that money and going and buying something else.
Okay.
So you have options like that, as opposed to buying something. Let's say you end up buying, and we know, I'm going to make an assumption here, but this has been historically, this is how it's worked. When you're buying a duplex, the value of that duplex will go up much more than if you were buying a condo, right? So yes, condos will go up in value, but duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes go up a hell of a lot more in value than the condos will, and definitely single-family homes do as well, right? The problem with, using a condo or a duplex as an investment is you end up in a situation where chances are you're not going to cash flow. For you to start cash flowing, you need to go bigger. You need to go 3 to 4 doors, 5 doors, so on and so forth.
So you have enough down payment to buy an $800,000 property. You have two opportunities that show up. There's a triplex and there's an eightplex. You would go for the eightplex.
Yes and no, depending on whether or not I'm going to be living in it. Okay. So yes, you are correct. The eightplex, chances are, if all things are equal, and we've seen this, we've seen fourplexes selling for as much as eightplexes, right? And you have 8 rents as opposed to 4 rents coming in. Which one do I choose? Whichever one suits my needs better. That's who I would choose, right? So if I'm planning on living in the building, chances are I'd probably go with a fourplex because you have less tenants lingering around, right?
Lingering around.
No, but it's true. Less tenants ringing your doorbell, right? Because when they know, look, we don't have to look much further. Do you remember that kiddie pool that I had bought?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so back in the day.
I don't know where this story is going because there's a lot of stories with that kiddie pool. Okay, go. Where are you going with this story?
Well, it wasn't really a kiddie pool, but I had, I had my building on
inflatable pool
in Hochelaga, and I end up going and I buy this pool, which was fairly a good size. I mean, it was not really, but whatever. It was.
Yeah, it was like deep enough. It was that big inflatable pool thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, and I put it in the backyard. And it made my freaking tenants jealous because I had this $100 pool that I bought from freaking Walmart or wherever I had bought it from, right? So that's the thing that you have to just be careful of. The more tenants have eyes on you as a landlord, the more they see how you live, the more they're going to ask of you. If you bring in someone to do repairs in the house, they're going to want repairs in the house. If you do repairs in one unit, the other one is going to come and say, oh, I need repairs in this. Okay, so having a limited amount of eyes on you as a landlord, I believe, for my personal opinion, is the right way to go. So if I'm not planning on living in it, yes, I will go for the 8, 10, 12, 16. And the biggest mistake that I've made as a real estate investor is that I didn't go bigger sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So that fourplex that I bought originally, great. But what I should have done after I had refinanced it that first time, I should have gone out and bought much larger properties. And then at that point, I would have had much more passive income coming in and obviously the appreciation of the value of the property as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think of other types of real estate investments like commercial, semi-commercial, REITs in the stock market?
Look, they're all investments in real estate. And I want to stay away from answering the question about REITs.
Mm-hmm.
Because REITs, you have to remember, are controlled by someone else.
Yeah.
Distributions are controlled by someone else. Everything is controlled by someone else. So do I disagree with having REITs in your investment portfolio? No. If you find a good REIT that pays dividends or pays good distributions and they've never missed distributions or anything like that, sure, go ahead. Buy some REITs, put them in your investment portfolio. But that doesn't make you... That's the equivalent of you owning mutual funds,
mm-hmm.
right?
Because you're owning a portion of this portfolio, basically, of real estate.
You're owning a fund, right? You're a part owner of a fund, which is fine, but that's not the end all. The beautiful thing about REITs is that your money is liquid. So if you choose that, if you want to cash it out, you can cash it out. When we're talking about real estate, we're talking about a real asset. We're talking about an asset that you own and you control. You control the rents, you control what is done with it, right? So you own you have all the modalities of ownership, right, that come with it. So what are the modalities of ownership? I'm going to take you to school now.
Oh, boy.
See if you remember. Usus, fructus, and abusus.
Oh my goodness,
right?
I
So
haven't heard that in 20 years.
There you go. So the three modalities of ownership, okay? Usus, fructus, and so when you own real estate, you have the right to use it, you have the right to collect fruits from it, you have the right to
abuse it,
i.e. sell it.
Okay.
Okay, so you have those modalities in real estate. You do not have those modalities when you buy a REIT, right? So that's where my issue comes in.
I understand.
Right? You don't have the control of the fruits. You have fruits that come from that REIT, but it's not the same thing.
And we have seen in the last few months a few REITs not be
Pay their
able
distributions,
to pay the distributions. So you don't want to be seen, you don't want to be in that situation where it's like, okay, wait a minute. And a lot of them have office towers and things like that, which are not doing as well as residential real estate. So it depends what REIT you're investing in. So again, we're not REIT experts, but yes, it's important to do your due diligence before putting your money into anything.
Look, we don't have to go much further. Our building is on the corner of Décarie and de l'Église. Next door to us, there's a massive building over there that's owned by a REIT. I'm not going to mention the name, but when that REIT acquired that building, what they did is they basically got rid of all the tenants, right?
Yeah.
And we were like, well, this building is empty. They have an underground parking. Winter's coming. Let's go and ask them if we can rent a spot from them, so that we can have indoor parking.
Yeah.
And when they have a tenant, we'll let go of our spot. No.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to earn revenues on it, which is crazy for me. But anyways, that's
another story.
That's a whole other story.
What about vacation rentals?
Fantastic idea. So this is something that I give as an example to a lot of my...
You had one of your pilot
moments.
Ladies and gentlemen.
This is your captain speaking.
Sorry. As you said it, I was just picturing you on the plane. Okay.
Yes, for those of you that don't know, I do fly airplanes. So, yes, I do have those moments.
I was like, oh, I just got him. Okay.
I've been flying since I was 12 years old.
Yes,
people don't realize that.
It's true. You flew before you drove.
I flew before I drove. So
absolutely.
Yes, every so often that giggity, if we look at Family Guy, comes out. But
vacation rentals.
So vacation rentals. This is something that I actually advise my clients to do. So if somebody wants to buy, again, the beautiful thing about real estate and real estate investing, your lifestyle can be supported, if you will, by your investments.
Which so you buy a chalet, not only are you renting it out, you're using it. You buy a place in Florida, not only are you renting it out, you're using it. I get it. Of course.
And of course, you have to make sure that you have the ability to rent it out, right? So
of course.
Let's just...
that's a parenthèse.
Exactly. So you need to make sure that you have the ability to rent out the properties, yada, yada,
because
yada.
certain buildings do not allow short-term rentals. You
exactly.
Absolutely.
Whether
right.
it's in Florida or whether it's here.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's something that I tell my clients. I say to them, look, you want to buy real estate. You also want to buy a country house. Why don't you just buy a country house and rent out your country house and, Airbnb it? Look at the municipality. Do they allow it? Does that, if you were to buy something in this zone, would you be able to do it? And if the answer is yes, Bob's your uncle, do it. And then you have some passive revenue that's coming in from that, right?
Yeah, we have a couple of comments on Facebook. First of all, we have Hillary Kornikova saying, love your show. Thanks, Hillary. Mike MTL, he's asking, will Montreal outpace Toronto one day in appreciation? Very good question, Mike.
So interestingly enough, Montreal has performed really, really well in the last number of years. The beautiful thing about Montreal, and people don't realize this, we're on an island. There's a limited amount of real estate available.
I realized it. We have to take a bridge.
Who has to take a bridge?
To get off of the island.
Oh, I thought you were saying we have to take a bridge coming into the city. I was like, what are you talking about? Which bridge
so we're on an island.
So we're on an island,
yes.
Okay? limited amount of real estate available right now. Yes, it's the other thing about Montreal is that there's been a lot of urban sprawl, right? So they haven't built it up high, they've built it up wide, which actually helps in increasing property values.
So you're talking about like South Shore, North Shore, all this kind of spread out
Exactly.
west to Vaudreuil, east, etc.
Exactly. We're not seeing, huge towers going up and they're all condo buildings and, people are buying like you see in Toronto, right? So we have a lot of urban sprawl that's occurring, which is actually helping with house prices. Well, helping. It's making house prices go up, right? It depends on which perspective you're looking at. If you already own, you're happy about the fact that house prices are going up. But if you don't own, you're really miserable because you're like, my God, like it's never ending, right? So will Montreal outpace Toronto? Only if new businesses come into the city and the city becomes more friendly to business, which currently it is not.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. A lot of head offices are no longer in Montreal. We've seen a lot of big companies move out into Ontario.
That's right.
And a lot of it had to do with language laws and things like that.
Exactly. Exactly. So if we see governments change positions and make it a more business-friendly environment, I do believe that Montreal has the ability to far outpace Toronto. Because between you and me, and this is no offense to anyone that's listening and they live in Toronto, but the reality is that Toronto is one type of animal, Montreal is a different one. I love Montreal. I think Montreal is a beautiful city, right? Even with all the bike paths and stuff, but even the bike paths, they lead to Montreal's charm.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
I can bitch and complain, and I can say what I want about how I feel about certain things. But the reality is that when people come from out of town, they'll see Montreal and they're like, "This is a beautiful city," and it is a beautiful city.
Yeah.
Okay, minus the potholes
and minus the winters.
But everything else is good. So, do I believe that it could outpace it? Yes, I can. But for that to happen, Montreal has to become more business friendly. And once that happens, then you will see a lot of change occur, especially in the downtown core and surrounding, right? So you have the downtown core, you have Hochelaga, Plateau, Myland,
Westmount.
Well, Westmount, I mean, has gone bonkers anyways, but you have like everything else anything that surrounds the downtown core will see a drastic increase in prices.
And we already see a lot of residential buildings go up downtown, which, 20 years ago we didn't see. So a lot of like where the old Children's Hospital used to be, there's nice buildings over there with the Brevia project. There's a lot of projects that went up downtown. You actually see a lot of people walking their dogs now downtown.
That's right.
Which you didn't see before because it was just for work. Which shows you that there's a lot of people living downtown now. So yes, I agree that it could become something fantastic. And we see it also with respect to there's a lot of scarcity with respect to what's available out there. So, when you
it's an island. There's a limited amount of space.
Yeah.
Everything's been built up, and short of them going up on the mountain and getting rid of the the funeral the cemetery over there, which I don't think is going to happen.
No.
It's saturated.
Yeah.
It's saturated. You go to Dollard, it's saturated. You go anywhere, it's saturated, the market. There's like one empty lot here and there.
It's true.
So
it's true. So now I just want to go over some issues that you should be prepared for.
And we do have a question that Danny had asked.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. Which I want to get to before going into the issues.
Absolutely.
Okay. So he asked you.
He asked me, okay, with respect, so this is Danny who works with us. If you transfer a property, for an investment property from a parent to a child, what are the tax implications? What's the process, etc.? And we're talking about while they're alive, not as an inheritance. But either way, it's a very similar process. So I'd like to go over that for him.
Okay, so transferring properties pre-death of a parent or even post death of a parent. What occurs in a moment like that is the equity that's built up into the property, number one, could be gifted to the children. Okay, so let's assume that the value of the property is $1 million, and the parents say, you know what, I'll give it to you for $600,000. Okay, so I just want 600 of that million. The $400,000 could be deemed an equity gift that the parent.
So they're
is
not
giving.
selling it to them at 600,000 or selling. They're not transferring it at 600. They're transferring it $1 million with 400,000 as a gift.
That is the correct way of doing it.
Okay.
Okay. When you do a transfer of property that is not at arm's length, in other words, between parents, going to children, between siblings, anything like that, anytime a transaction occurs that's not at arm's length, you open yourself up to the potential of capital gains coming after the government coming after you for capital gains. So let me explain. If you get an appraisal done on this property, and the appraisal says that the property is worth $1 million, and you transfer the property and you sell it to your child at $1 million, you give them an equity gift of 400, which means that they get a mortgage of 600, you're good to go. No problem. What ends up happening is people know that their property is worth $1 million. They transfer it at 600,000 to their child. They get the child to get a mortgage for whatever amount. And in a case like that, the government's going to come back after a year and they're going to say, it's wonderful that you did this for your child, that you transferred this property to them at 600, but the value of it is not 600, it's $1 million, which means that there's capital gains to be paid. They're going to determine what the value of that property is at that time.
And had it been a stranger, they wouldn't come back to you.
Had it been a stranger, they won't come back to you. But when it's an arm's length transaction, they will come back to you for it, okay? And in a case like that, when that occurs, they're going to hit up the vendor, being the parents, with a capital gain. If the parents fail to pay that capital gain, then that capital gain gets transferred to the children. And now the person that actually inherited or got that property. And the government will, and I've seen it, will put liens on that property to secure their position.
Now, Danny has a follow-up question. He just posted on Facebook. How about if the parents don't want any funds from the transfer? So basically you said they're getting transferred. I just want my 600 and the other 400 is an equity gift. So the question is, they don't want the 600.
No problem. You just got to still make sure that you're registering the transfer to occur. So again, let's say there's no mortgage, right? So you have this property that's worth $1 million. There's no mortgage on it whatsoever. The parents say, I'm giving you this. I don't want any money for it, right? You still have to put the value at $1 million if it's worth $1 million. And then what you end up doing is you have to calculate, the accountant has to go in and say, the capital gains that are going to be payable on this property are going to be X dollars. And then the child, what they should be doing is they should be getting a mortgage in the amount of that capital gains to give to the parents so that when it comes tax time, they're able to pay it.
So it's always based on market value, basically, when you're transferring between parent and child. The good thing is there's no welcome tax to pay.
That's right.
So you have to make sure to register that properly at the notary so that the notary declares that it's parent to child. There's no capital gains. But yes, to answer your question, Danny, it doesn't matter whether or not they want any money out of it. If they want any money out of it, it's up to you to get that mortgage for them to get that money out of it. But otherwise, on paper, what's been transferred is market value, and you have to pay capital gains. Well, basically, they have to pay capital gains.
Failure for them to pay it, you have to pay it.
Exactly. So it's deemed a disposition. It's basically as if they sold it, and they have to pay capital gains. Same thing during the case of an inheritance. The estate has to pay the capital gains, but of course, seeing as the children inherit the estate, they are the ones responsible for the capital gains. So, and the capital gains, of course, it all depends also what's the value of the property that they bought it at. Did they crystallize the value at some point in time, which means sort of to lock it in at a certain amount? It was back in the 80s, 90s that you were able to do that. I think you could still do that in certain cases with your accountant.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then basically you pay taxes on half of the gain
Exactly.
at your marginal tax bracket. So you have to get ready for that.
Exactly. And a good accountant's going to be able to calculate things properly for you, especially if it's the same accountant that you've always used. Chances are they're going to have all their information. They'll have everything ready, and you're good. Bob's your uncle. You're going to be able to take care of everything.
Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Danny. So basically, you can get, if there's no mortgage on it right now, you could get a mortgage just to cover the capital gains.
Exactly. Now, looking at other properties, and this is something that's been coming up more and more lately, if we would have had this conversation in 2019 or 2018, I probably would have said, no, don't do it. It's not good. But something interesting happened for me in 2021, if I remember correctly, where I ended up acquiring a condo hotel. So a lot of people want to invest in real estate, but they really want a hands-off approach. They don't want to deal with tenants. They don't want to deal with anything. They just want to own real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So condo hotels, and there's a few of them in Montreal. One of them was Hotel Le Cristal. The other one is the Le Saint-Sulpice.
Yeah, and there's, I think, the Hilton Garden Inn and things like that.
Yeah, there's a couple of other ones also, but for the most part, Le Cristal was one and the other one. Le Cristal just sold to a Saudi investor. There's no more units that you can purchase there. But there's other condo hotels where you can go in, and for a reasonable price, we're talking $250,000 to $300,000, you can buy a unit within a hotel that is managed by the hotel, and you do profit sharing with the hotel as to what revenues come in. And we're talking about pretty decent revenues on, I could tell you for our units at the Saint-Sulpice, and I say units because I've bought more of them over the years, but our units generate about $35,000 a year of rental revenue that comes in, of which it's completely hands-off. If I have a tenant, if you will, or a renter that goes in and punches a hole through a wall, well, guess what? It's the hotel that takes care of it. I don't take care of it.
Yeah, so that's definitely an option, and that goes into also that connects also with short-term leasing, where I want to mention that these types of investments do come with difficult financing solutions. So at the end of the day, sometimes it's an all-cash purchase, sometimes it's with a private lender.
Generally, that's how those are structured.
So definitely, if you're going to go in and say, I want to buy this condo hotel, or I want to buy this condo that's been doing short-term leasing, and you don't have a solid lease on it, the financing becomes a bit of an issue. We have another question from Mike Montreal. Hello, am I allowed to finance my house to a new buyer? I sell the house to the person and basically become the bank.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's
provided there's no mortgage.
Exactly. So that's called a balance of sale or owner financing. You could definitely do that for all or a portion of the purchase. Absolutely. Exactly. So I just want to go over a couple of little issues or things to be prepared for when you become a real estate investor.
Do it.
Okay. So number one is vacancy. You have to be ready for some vacancies. So what do you do in the case where, you're just or you're barely cash flowing and then the tenant leaves? You're in a negative.
Which is why I like larger properties, because the larger properties will, even if you have a tenant that leaves, you have the other rents that are coming in.
Exactly. 1 out of 16 tenants that leaves is not the same as 1 out of 2.
Exactly.
So definitely it affects your whole budgeting situation.
Yeah.
So you do have to get ready for a vacancy happening here and there. Maintenance, like the odd maintenance that needs to be done. It's normal. It's a building. So you have to have, I don't like to call it a rainy day fund. But
reserves.
You have to have a reserves account, basically, some sort of contingency account, just to have money for emergencies, for vacancies, and things like that. Of course, there's damages that could be caused by tenants as well. And you just have to be a little handy if you want, because things do come up, and you bringing in someone to fix a piece of sheetrock versus you doing it yourself can definitely be quite costly. So you can end up spending all of your revenues on contractors.
So can I give the example? Right. So we had our duplex, and I bring in, and I think I've talked about this since, but I'm going to talk about it again because So talking about being a little bit handy, okay? And we're not talking about anything earth-shattering here, okay? We're talking about knowing the basics. And I don't know if Home Depot still does the classes, but they used to do like some interesting classes on Saturday mornings where you can go and learn how to plaster sheetrock, you know, for example. Anyways, our duplex, the upper unit was rented, the lower unit wasn't rented, and it needed repairs. Okay, so I needed to change the floor. It needed a good cleaning and a good paint job. Okay, so we bring in a contractor, and I'll never forget this guy. How much is it going to cost to do this? You know. And he's sitting there shaking his head, looking 50 G's. And I'm like, 50 G's? The fuck are you going to do for 50 G's? Right? And he's like, well, you know, I'm going to rip up the floor. I don't know what I'm going to find underneath. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Like, and he's going on. And I'm like, okay. I said, all right. Let's. And I'm in 50 G's. I don't even think that included materials.
That's what I was going to say. That was just labor.
I think that was just labor. Yeah, okay. Yeah. But anyways, I go, let's assume that you rip up this floor and you need to change the subfloor.
Yeah.
Okay. How many days are you going to take to rip up the floor? We're not talking about like, you know, a freaking 5,000 square foot home here. I'm talking about
1,200.
What 1,200? It's like 800 square feet. Okay. I'm like, let's assume that you rip up the floor. You need to change the subfloor. Okay. So how many days is it going to take you to rip up the floor? 3 days.
Okay.
Okay. 3 days. No problem. We're good. Okay. 3 days to rip up the floor. What about the subfloor? 3 days to rip up the subfloor. Now we're going to be putting up a new subfloor, new flooring. And we need to put new moldings and we need to paint. So I'm going to give you 3 days for each one of those items. Okay. Which basically took him to about 2.5 weeks of work. 2.5 weeks of work for 50 grand? Like, are you mental? Like, this is crazy, right? It doesn't make sense. So anyways, long story short, when after he said this, I was like, this is just not like, so it doesn't
basically
compute,
he's
right?
getting paid $2,500 a day.
Essentially, exactly. Okay, which doesn't make sense. So what do? I say, okay, guys, let's roll up our sleeves. So I get the whole crew together, right?
Who's the crew?
Marav and the kids and everyone. We get together, and you know, we go in, we start painting. So Marav loves painting, so she paints the place. I go in, me and Michael, we rip up the old flooring. We look at the subfloor. There was a couple of sections that needed replacing. We replace a couple of the sections that needed replacing, and then the whole job took us 2 weekends to do. So 4 days. The total cost with materials and everything was like $3,500 versus
savings.
Yeah, versus 50.
Yeah.
So these are the things that you need to look at if you're going to decide that you're going to be a landlord. You best either have a best friend that's a contractor, or you need to get a little bit handy. You need to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty a little bit, because short of that,
yes,
yeah,
and that's it. That's it. We're running out of real estate.
Oh my God, we're like okay. My stories. Okay, guys,
your stories.
We've run out of real estate. Okay, if people want to get a hold of us,
you can reach us at the office at 514-680-4674 or online at nordest.ca.
So next week we are going to be off, guys, because it is spring break. So we'll be
spring break.
Yeah, okay. No, so we'll be back in a couple of weeks. But till next time, everyone, have a blessed week. Love you all.